please help me to welcome Dr. Sharon Quah.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for coming. It's lovely to see so many familiar and friendly faces in the audience. Thank you, Asia Research Institute. Thank you, Professor Jin Yang, for giving me this opportunity to share my research findings at the ARI Asia Trends Public Lecture. A big thank you to ARI Events team as well for organizing this event and taking care of the logistics and making this event possible. Thank you, Valerie. If you have any questions during my lecture, can I request that you hold on to them and raise them during the Q&A session? There will be a Q&A segment after the presentation. Thank you. As mentioned by Professor Yang, I'm a research fellow from ARI Asia Research Institute, National University of Singapore. At ARI, I'm with the Changing Family in Asia Research Cluster, where Professor Jin Yang is our cluster leader, and some of my colleagues from the cluster are here today. And as mentioned before as well by Professor Yang, I returned to Singapore in 2013 and started work with NUS after completing my PhD in sociology with the University of Sydney. I've been researching on this topic for the last 7 years. But my interest in researching on divorce, specifically post-divorce lives, began as early as 2002, when I dissolved a problematic marriage myself and went through a very difficult divorce. While I was relieved to have ended a turbulent marriage and prolonged divorce proceedings, I quickly realized that the post-divorce life, especially during the initial years, was filled with uncertainties and challenges. I was immediately confronted with all kinds of practical consideration other than having to cope with the intense emotional pain that stemmed from ending a very long relationship that I had invested deeply in. I had to deal with many practical considerations at the same time. I had to look for a lawyer, I had to take out personal loans to pay for the legal fees. I had to revisit painful memories during petition writing. I also had to hunt my ex-husband down to get him to sign the divorce papers, and that took about 1.5 years to eventually find him in the prison. I also had to move out of my matrimonial home. I had to look for temporary and long-term accommodation, and these are just some of the few major changes and turbulences in my life that I had to deal with at that time. As I went about working out my post-divorce life, I encountered several roadblocks and obstacles and reflected upon the scope and intensity of challenges a Singaporean divorcee would have to face. And my personal divorce experience is precisely the motivation behind this study. 6 years after the divorce, I wanted to embark on the research project. I wanted to go on a research journey to investigate the impact of divorce on individual lives and families. I wanted to use my research findings to suggest ways how policies could be changed and how conditions of Singaporean divorcees and their families could be improved. And that was what brought me to embark on a PhD program with University of Sydney. And this book, Perspectives on Marital Dissolution, Divorce Biographies in Singapore, is the result of that research quest. It is developed from my doctoral thesis. Throughout my research, I had many questions. How do divorcees make that life-changing decision to dissolve their marriage? Is it really a selfish, individualistic, and careless decision, as commonly portrayed in the main discourses on divorce and assumed by many? And under what conditions and circumstances do they make that life-altering decision? What happened to them after the divorce? How does marital dissolution change and impact individual lives and families? Are families really broken after the divorce? How are they impacted in terms of finances, living arrangements, family configurations and practices, and their relationship with others? Are there more constructive perspectives we could have about divorce instead of seeing it as a permanent rupture of individual and family lives? So these are the questions I wanted to investigate during my research journey. In short, I was interested to look at the post-divorce lives of divorcees and their families and offering different perspectives on marital dissolution. I will now do a short reading from the first chapter, which is the introduction of my book. When Yu Mei arrived at the pub situated in Clarke Quay, one of Singapore's night sports districts, her closest girlfriends were eagerly awaiting her. As a bottle of champagne popped, the group of overexcited girlfriends rushed to give Yu Mei hugs and kisses. They made a toast to this new milestone in Yu Mei's life. But this was not your typical celebration. When Yu Mei sent out invitations to her girlfriends a few weeks ago, she wrote, "Help me celebrate the end of my marriage, the start of a new life, and an excuse for us to all get together." Yu Mei had been married to a corporate executive for 11 years and remained as a full-time homemaker and mother of 2 children during the marriage. In recent years, her husband had become increasingly dissatisfied at work. He would often bring his frustration home and vent it out on Yu Mei and their children. His domination over them consequently became unbearable. Fights at home were more explosive than before. Amidst the angry blows she received frequently from her husband, she felt that she had been leading a life based on her husband's terms, and in so doing had lost a sense of self within the marriage. "I just didn't know who I was anymore. My voice was completely gone," explained Yu Mei. The last straw for Yu Mei was when her ex-husband came home one night reeking of alcohol with love bites on his neck and becoming aggressive when Yu Mei confronted him. He beat her up for 2 hours after locking their frightened children in the bedroom. This abusive treatment, according to Yu Mei, was what propelled her to leave her marriage with her children. When the divorce came through, she decided to throw a divorce party, explaining, "People have parties to celebrate important stages in their lives, like marriage, so why can't I celebrate becoming single again?" The party marked a new life course, one where she would find, in her own words, the real me. Beyond the fun at the divorce party, she knew she still had a long way to go in her healing process, and life as a working mother, having to raise and care for her children single-handedly, would be challenging. However, surrounded by her girlfriends and close family at the party, she knew she would be able to pull through the heartaches with the love and support of her family and friends. To Yu Mei, the divorce party was a symbolic event that marked the beginning of a second chance at life and a new trajectory to reclaim her freedom and individuality. The accounts of Yu Mei and other divorcees whom I've talked to seems to suggest that they do not perceive divorce as all that disastrous and crippling, but in fact emancipating. Even among those who did not mark the end of their marriage with a party, the liberation of divorce is felt in other perceptible ways. The exit of an unsatisfying marriage promises a second chance in life as they consider possibilities, decide on their next move, make adaptations, and embark on a new journey. However, beyond the party, the post-divorce lives divorcees take on or undergo are not without challenges, obstacles, and tensions. It involves coping with the changes the crisis divorce brings. It involves developing practical and discursive strategies for survival and self-sufficiency. It involves negotiating personal relationships to form a new supportive and intimate network. It involves navigating through the social and policy context they are located. It also involves reconciling internal dilemmas and contradictions as they formulate new social identities. It also involves rebuilding their lives to pursue independence and productivity. Divorcees construct what I call a divorce biography to embark on a new life journey in uncoupling themselves and working out their post-divorce lives. In my book, I unpack the theoretical concept of a divorce biography, emphasizing the importance of adopting a biographical approach in understanding the experience of divorce. I argue that it should not be seen just as an isolated legal act to dissolve a marriage. I offer an analytical framework to show how divorce needs to be understood as a process and journey where individuals work out different aspects of their post-divorce lives. Now, this is not to say that all divorcees will go through the same journey, the same process, or the same stages of divorce. I show in my book each divorce trajectory is complex, sometimes messy, sometimes straightforward, sometimes chaotic, sometimes smooth sailing. Divorcees move to and fro chaos and stability and experience both periods of precariousness and productivity. There are 4 elements in my concept of divorce biography: assertion of individuality, importance of personal communities, pursuit of productivity, diversity and complexity of pathways. In chapter 4, 5 and 6 of my book, you will see the interplay of these elements as I discuss how divorcees make their decision to leave their marriages, cope with the crisis, work out different aspects of their post-divorce lives, and organize their post-divorce relationships. I will first discuss the element of assertion of individuality. Now, divorce happens when needs and expectations are not met, and individuals make their decision to leave an unfulfilling, sometimes destructive marriage. However, although the respondents each had a different story to tell about why they decided to end their marriage, their stories revolve around themes concerning the pursuit of productivity, the pursuit of authenticity, and the assertion of individuality. I will share one of my respondents' story with you. Selma, aged 44 years old, who had been divorced for about 10 years. She gained full custody of her 3 children after she initiated and filed for the petition to end her 10-year marriage. When we met at her HDB 4-room flat, she appeared confident, relaxed, and settled. A sense of achievement was written all over her face when she showed me around in the HDB 4-room flat. She described her experience of transiting from homelessness to becoming a homeowner of a HDB 4-room flat. However, her sense of achievement was first and foremost derived from her ability to exercise her rights to leave her abusive marriage. Throughout her traumatic marriage, she suffered from emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, and as well as infidelity on the part of her ex-husband. This is what she said to me when we met at her flat. He was also having an affair. He was always womanizing. I had to pay the bills, like I had to pay for everything. And I was given only a monthly $200 allowance to go to work. He will always pick a fight. If I say something intelligent in front of other people, he will come back to pick a fight or hit me. I was constantly living in fear. I was 33 and I actually peed in my bed. Then one night he tried to grab me and I pushed him away. He went berserk and he actually beat me up. He beat me up overnight and locked the kids in the room. It was just a nightmare. I passed out and he raped me. I was badly beaten up. I was in the hospital. Now for Selma, the act of initiating the divorce and filing for petition was an act of assertion. It was like me telling myself that I did not want that anymore. Enough was enough, and that was what she said to me when we met. By being able to stand up to her aggressor, the man who had instilled so much fear in her, she took a significant step to reclaim her rights and identity. However, I have to clarify that my research found that my divorce respondents took a significant length of time to contemplate before arriving at their decision to call the marriage quits. It was certainly not a careless or impulsive decision. In the case of Selma, it took her 10 years to eventually end her turbulent marriage. It wasn't a straightforward decision-making for her, but one that is complicated by their location in the social and policy context. For Selma, she did not want her children to grow up in a single-parent family, and she was trying so hard to preserve that traditional family framework and let the family stay complete in accordance with the dominant family norms and practices. Now, how else do divorcees assert their individuality? When divorce takes place, divorcees experience disruptions and uncertainties in different aspects of their lives, and they will have to respond to cope and to adjust with the changes. Existential questions such as, who am I now? Where do I go from here? How will I support myself and my children? Where will I live? Where will my children live? How do I tell others? How shall I manage my relationships? How will my future look like? All these questions confront them as they stand at the crossroad of their existence. In my book, I discuss how the respondents work out different aspects of their post-divorce lives, including housing arrangements, finances, childcare responsibilities, and emotional well-being. What kind of challenges do they face when divorce takes place and at different junctures of their post-divorce lives? What are the different strategies they employ to cope with the crisis? Now, finding themselves at this crossroad, they consciously create a new divorce biography, and this process releases a potential for resourcefulness and creativity not previously realized. Even for those for whom divorce was not initiated by them, they too express their sense of self as they design their divorce biographies. However, I wonder if divorce is solely an individualistic, self-directed act. My research findings will show that how divorcees' life decisions and biographies are certainly not all DIY, certainly not all do-it-yourself, but clearly influenced by their personal relationships and embedded in the meanings they draw from the communities they are located in. During the process of constructing their divorce biographies, they consult the expert in their lives, for example, family members, colleagues, close friends, and even those who have gone through similar life situations. And together with these significant members in their communities, they contemplate the next move, they discuss solutions, and they make collaborative decisions. When I met Lei Hui, a 53-year-old lady, for the interview, she had only dissolved her marriage 2 years before. It was again not a swift decision. In fact, it was only on the second attempt that Lei Hui finally let go of her marriage. She first filed for divorce in 2005, but withdrew her petition shortly after that because she felt that she couldn't bring herself to end the marriage. She was concerned about how people would perceive her. She was worried whether her husband could cope after the divorce. 3 years later, she filed for divorce again and eventually stuck with her decision to part with her ex-husband and end their marriage of 28 years. Her final decision was definitely not made in isolation, but made in close relation with her personal communities, with the main motivating factor, main encouragement coming from her son, her teenage son. Her son said to her, "I don't understand why you are still with him." To Lei Hui, her son's desire for her to leave his father and end the dysfunctional marriage was the most important motivating factor to end it all. For many years, Lei Hui did not want to break up the family because she did not want her son to grow up in a single-parent family. Her desire to maintain her married status and to conform to the societal expectation of raising her son in a dual-parent family stopped her from terminating the highly dysfunctional marriage. However, when she was encouraged by her son to leave the marriage, she decided to proceed with the divorce and allowed her son to be a mediator to facilitate the negotiation with her ex-husband. Other family members were also very supportive of her decision to end the marriage. This is what she said to me. "I was well supported by my family. My family said that it was all your decision. If you want to divorce, we will support you." One of my sisters said that if I were you, I would have divorced him long ago. I have 4 siblings. I only talked to 2 sisters. When the divorce was finalized, they were supportive towards me. My 2 sisters went to the court with me. Such affirmation of her intention to terminate the marriage was crucial in influencing her final decision after many years of contemplation. It helped her make sense of her own decision and experiences whenever she struggled to accept her new identity. Such validation from family and friends is especially important in a context when divorce is still being frowned upon and divorcees still face varying degrees of marginalization. Besides obtaining validation for their decisions, they also turn to their immediate personal community of kin and friends for financial, practical, and emotional help. The assistance they received from their personal communities was crucial in mitigating the unwelcome setbacks marital dissolution had caused. This is again very important when they are unable to receive the necessary help from the public system. Now, I've also observed in my research that not only is there a persisting importance of personal relationships and communities, there's also an emergence of new forms of solidarity and intimacy. Now, it's probably counterintuitive to think about relationship formation in the event of divorce because we typically associate divorce with marital dissolution, relationship dissolution. However, my findings show that despite the strong evidence for individualization, they remain close to their personal communities. My respondents reconstructed their personal communities, often to include their biological kin and close friends. They move on to find a new sense of belonging in these communities. They did not stop seeking and constructing meaningful and intimate family relationships. They reconfigured their family units and redefined their friendships in a way that worked for them. My findings show that the notion of broken family does not seem to be a fair description of their post-divorce life. Family relationships continue to thrive in different but equally important forms. Family values did not get eroded, and family relationships did not decrease in importance. They certainly do not come from broken families, but instead reconfigured and in many instances stronger families. In many instances, when I was talking to my respondents, I realized that the bond between divorcees and their family members became stronger as they supported each other through the crisis. This is what Selma said to me. I remember when my kids were still young, they are considered broken homes. It doesn't mean that two parents in a home fighting all the time is not broken. It is. You guys are lucky that you come home, no one is fighting, hurling abuse at each other. You come home, this is your safety, this is what home is. Even when some personal relationships did break down as a result of divorce, for example, the relationship with the ex-spouse broke down, the relationship with their former in-laws broke down, or their relationship with their own family members who did not approve of their divorce broke down, or even some friendships were broken because some friends had decided to take the side of their ex-husband. So there were cases there were instances that relationships did break down. But even in those instances, they did not stop constructing new relationships that make sense to them. They developed stronger ties and connections with other family and friends who showed them empathy, understanding, and acceptance. Commitment, a sense of belonging, and obligation remain distinct features in their post-divorce relationships. Now I'll share with you another story. Benjamin, a furniture designer in his 40s, related his emotional turmoil during the first 2 years of his divorce. When Benjamin left his 3-year marriage, he lost not just his marriage, but also his job as an employee with a religious organization. At work, he was asked to take a long sabbatical, and when he was told to take a long sabbatical, he knew that it was equivalent to losing his job. He lost a lot of relationships with his colleagues as well. Colleagues at work shunned away from him after they found about his divorce. And in his own personal life, he lost many friends, especially married friends and friends that he knew through his job. He sank into depression for 2 years. Even though Benjamin lost many relationships as a result of divorce, he managed to draw support from his own family members and a few good friends. This is what he said. My mom was my greatest support. She didn't judge me. To her, it happened. So we move on. To her, it was about helping me to move on. She cooked for me, she made sure I went back. She wanted to make sure that I occupied my time. She would ask my brother and sister-in-law to clean up the house with me. They would come over and spend the rest of the day with me till evening. They would have dinner with me at my place and then go back. I guess I was encouraged by my family's and friends' support. I woke up every day and felt that there was hope. Of course, inwardly I was grieving, but outwardly when I see them, they are my strength, my hope to help me push on each day. The support Benjamin obtained from his family and close friends contributed to his recovery after the divorce, and that propelled him to pull himself together and reorganize his life. He went on to find himself a new job, and is now highly successful in his job. During my research journey, I was also interested to find out if divorce is truly a lifelong tragedy that weakens individual lives and family relationships and entraps divorced families in a paralytic state of affairs, as widely depicted in family and divorce literature and public discourses. Or is it a second go at life? This brings me to the third element of my concept of divorce biography, the pursuit of productivity. In my book, I argue that the experience of divorce is not all debilitating. The construction of a divorce biography involves not just managing undesirable after effects, but also pursuing and achieving productivity in different aspects of post-divorce lives. It provides opportunities for self-responsibility, independence, and relationship formation. The sense of failure experienced as a result of the breakdown of marriage was compensated by a sense of success when the respondents managed to stand on their feet again, acquired the means to take care of themselves, to earn a livelihood, to gain financial stability, and to tap into their own creativity to draw support from their personal community. This recurring theme that emerged from my respondents' stories is their unwillingness to stay divorced. They were eager to get that second chance in life, to get their lives back, and to feel good about themselves again. One of them said this to me, you can't stay divorced, you can't stay a divorced person for your whole life. You become a single person again. How long can you stay divorced? Their stories revealed that they worked through obstacles and reorientated themselves to their new post-divorce lifestyles, living arrangements, and social identities. Now, this is not to say that there's no pain, no sorrow, no despondence, no difficulties, or no challenges. But from time to time, they do have to cope with different kinds of obstacles, and some of these obstacles can be overwhelming. But yet, at the same time, that desire to pick themselves up, to move on, to start over again, was pronounced in my respondent stories. Lastly, I show how divorce biographies are complex, non-standardized, non-linear, and diverse. There's not just one divorce biography, but many divorce biographies. They are not just a single story of devastation and tragedy as commonly portrayed. Family research has typically focused on the painful aftermath of divorce, thereby promoting the poor perception of divorce and its supposedly destructive impact on community and social order. Indeed, it could even be argued that such research has helped to legitimize the lack of support for divorced families, so that the society is not seen as encouraging divorce. Now, although family studies focusing on the negative effects of divorce constitute an important lens through which we understand the social phenomenon, I argue that it is certainly not the only one. The constructive outcomes also demand attention as they help to move past the moralistic tendency to regard divorce as merely destructive. My work combines both the precarious and productive aspects of the experience to gain a more insightful understanding of marital dissolution without moralizing it. I suggest considering the experience of divorce as a biographical process where divorcees go through an undulating post-divorce journey comprising both challenges and successes, instead of perceiving it as a permanent crisis. Now, given that this study drew its findings from Singapore, it is necessary to understand the social, cultural, and policy context where my respondents construct their divorce biographies. The context certainly influences how Singaporean divorcees construct their divorce biographies. In some instances, the structural roadblocks created more obstacles for divorcees and their families as they work out their post-divorce lives. With divorce becoming more common, it may be perceived that divorce is generally more acceptable in Singaporean society as compared to a few decades ago. However, there's still a certain degree of resistance towards this social phenomenon, both in public and private domains. In my book, I explore the changing and contesting perspectives on marital dissolution in Singapore, the extent of normalization and acceptance of divorce, how the state, community, individual, particularly divorcee in Singapore, view divorce, and how dominant family ideologies, practices, and norms influence their construction of divorce biographies. Now, in the context of Singaporean society where the nuclear family made up of a legally married couple with children is the preferred and favoured family type, what is it like being divorced and having a non-normative family arrangement? What kind of structural obstacles do Singaporean divorcees and their children face that make their already problematic post-divorce journey even more complicated and turbulent? In my research, I explore the contradictions, the dilemmas, and the tension experienced by Singaporean divorcees as they navigate around state policies, societal expectations, and family norms. I examine the condition that facilitates or obstructs the pursuit of productivity in different aspects of their post-divorce lives. Now, the stories of my Singaporean divorce respondents have shown that post-divorce support must first come in the form of removing social stigma attached to unconventional family forms. As long as non-mainstream family arrangements remain unacceptable and disapproved by various authorities, individuals, including both adults and children, in such family settings who continue to face systemic exclusion and alienation in their everyday life. In some instances, limited access to public services, lack of supportive resources, and inflexible administrative procedures have in fact produced more complications and obstacles for divorcees. For example, complicating housing policy with strict eligibility criteria that some of my respondents found it so hard to understand and navigate. Housing is one of the greatest concerns for divorcees when they have to quickly move out of their matrimonial property and to look for temporary or long-term accommodation for themselves and their children. It is especially challenging for divorcees who could not return to their parents' home, either because there's no more room in their parents' home, or that their parents do not agree to their move because they do not approve of the divorce, or that they are worried that by moving back, family conflicts will arise. So in such scenario where they could not return to their parents' home, they would very much need public assistance. However, many of my respondents couldn't get any form of public assistance, whether it is temporary rental flats or purchase of BTO, sale of balance or resale flats. In such scenario, they will be in great distress. In my book, I detail more examples how structural conditions can complicate the divorce biographies of my respondents. Now, Singapore Deputy Prime Minister Tharman has once mentioned that the challenges and needs of low-income single mothers are multifaceted, and the whole village, including the government, must be involved to support them. Based on the narrative accounts of my respondents, some of them, however, did not feel that the whole village had come forward to help them. Neither did some of them feel that they could approach or involve their whole village, whether it is the public support systems or the immediate family and friends. Whenever they fail to receive support from their family and friends, they express their wish for public support system to fill the gaps and help them kickstart their journey to recovery and productivity. One of the respondents said this to me: "I'm not asking for handouts, just a bit of support to help us get back on our feet quickly so that we can move on and care for our kids." Post-divorce support in different areas rendered by the community could therefore be more effective and comprehensive, especially when divorcees and their children fear to receive crucial help from their own personal network of friends and family. Existing policies and public programs could also reflect greater sensitivity to their unique challenges. By providing appropriate, timely and useful post-divorce support, divorcees and their families could more steadily and quickly conquer the difficulties of divorce and move on to contribute to the society as productive citizens. And in doing so, children of divorced parents will also build greater resilience towards risks associated with parental divorce. So there is a lot of benefits to the society where we support divorced families and their children. It is not the same as promoting marital breakdown or promoting divorce when we support them. Rather, it is to aid and guide them to that trajectory so that they can achieve productivity quickly. What we perhaps need to acknowledge is that it is the marital partnership that has failed, not the individuals that have failed. This acknowledgement is key to improving the post-divorce conditions of divorcees. Only when we adopt such a perspective towards divorce, we'll stop penalizing them for their unsuccessful marriages, stop implying that they have not done enough to avoid divorce, and stop adding negative labels to them. We will also then start believing in supporting them back on that track of stability and productivity. Now, in Social and Family Development Minister Tan Chuan Jin's post-election interview last week, he talked about the process of engagement with the people and said this: "Nobody wants to be a digit. We all want to feel that we can make a difference to our own lives and that we actually matter. As you know, we have a lot of statistics, a lot of data, a lot of ideas. But sometimes, yes, it is logical, but where am I in the whole process as you are talking? The process of engagement is really about connecting better with our people because you need to walk the journey side by side." My hope, therefore, is that more public support and assistance could be provided for divorcees and their families so that they will not feel that they are all alone in their post-divorce journey, and that the whole village will come forward to walk the journey with them side by side. I'm particularly thankful to the Singaporean divorce participants who have taken time and effort to share their stories with me. Their stories are about the adversities, agony, and anguish they experience. Their stories expose the structural roadblocks and gaps in existing public policy that make their post-divorce journeys even more challenging. Their stories, however, also reveal their optimism, courage, tenacity, and hope for a better future, better life. It is therefore hoped that this book on Singaporean divorce biographies, like any other literature on biographies, will give us a glimpse of ourselves, reflect the human spirit, inspire by example, fires imagination to life's possibilities, and create lifelong models for us. I hope you'll give this book a read. Thank you.